Hey, welcome back to TV Aftermath. This is your boy BrogiNaric, and today I'm going to be giving a review on The Tick Season 2, the Amazon Prime Video series, The Tick, based on the fictional character from the comics, the cartoons, and the other previous live-action TV show. Now, The Tick was created, he's a superhero, basically it's a superhero parody, and he was created by Ben Edlund, who is a writer and prominent creator throughout Hollywood. The Tick is a very popular comic book character that started out as an independent comic book, and it became big once it got into animation and further on. Very much like Ninja Turtles, although it didn't get quite as big as Ninja Turtles, but similar origins of being more serious and then over time exploding outside of the comic book genre. This is the second season of the new Tick show on Amazon, and there will be spoilers from the first season. If you don't want that, then go check it out. It's on, once again, on Amazon Prime Video. The tone of the Tick is very comedic. Think Deadpool, but everything's not sex and violence. It's very much a trope on the superhero genre and comic books, especially a lot of crime noir type feel to it as well. The Amazon series is more of a play on the Marvel Netflix series, where everything's a bit more grounded. It's still zany by the end of it, and then this season is very closer to the comics, where how zany it can get. The first season ended, I think, in 2017, so it's been about 2 years since, or about a year gap, but this show picks up right after the first season. After the Tick and Arthur have saved the city from the Terror, they become famous superheroes, and now they have to deal with new threats and paperwork in order to save the day yet again. So some of my positives for this season, there's a bigger budget, much bigger budget, which was one of the problems with the original TV show that they did on Fox. The budget was so limited and the technology was so limited, they couldn't really do much with the Tick's abilities. But I would have to say on the Amazon series, they definitely increased the budget. You get more action this season. You get, I just like in the certain costumes that they have for the characters are much more elaborate. They're kind of goofy, which is the point to a degree. You know, they're kind of sort of well, yeah, sort of cosplay to a degree, but good enough. You know what I'm saying? The characters are all great. Some of the new characters they created in this show are awesome, and there's a lot of good character development that builds off of the first season for the most of your main characters, except for the Tick. The Tick is always the Tick, but like Arthur, Dot, and Miss Lint, some of them they all get good development this season. For some of my negatives is mainly, as good as this season was, I still want to see more of the classic villains from the Tick series. I don't know how many of them they can put in the show, because I don't think Ben Edlund has the rights to all of them, from the comics to the cartoons to the previous show. So that might be the reason why he always continues to create new villains. Also, it could also just be because he's a very creative guy. And I wanted to see more classic villains, more classic characters, and the villains in general. One of the weaker problems with the first season was the villains weren't that great, or they weren't as zany as they could be, except for the Terror. Jackie Earle Haley as the Terror was great. I didn't think Miss Lint was all that, but she's definitely developed to a character that I really like over time. And the villain for this season is fine. It's not terrible, but it's not the same level of when you think of a Tick villain. We have Arthur Everest, played by Griffin Newman, who, I like this version of Arthur. He's a much more confident version, and he's not a psychic. He's his own hero, which is the thing I really liked about this Arthur. And we get more into his backstory with him with the PTSD and him being a conspiracy theorist trying to prove that the Terror exists. And the main things he does this season is he fully embraces his life as a superhero. We get that classic moment when he quits his job because he can't be an accountant anymore. He has to be a superhero, and he potentially wants to live out his childhood dream of being a member of the Flag Five, which is this popular superhero team. We have the Tick, played by Peter Serafinowicz, who I would say is at this point the best version of the Tick. We have, you got the comic, you got Townsend Coleman, who did the cartoon voice, Patrick Warburton from the Fox show, and I would have to say Peter Serafinowicz is, in my when I think of the Tick, I think a little less of Townsend Coleman and more of Peter Serafinowicz, because he is so great. He's really funny, and I like, once again, the technology, how he can move he can do the gags much better. He's also a little bit taller than Patrick Warburton's, and the guy that plays Arthur is much shorter than the guy that played Arthur in the Fox show, so their dynamic looks better. His costume looks better, and I like how this version of the Tick, he's not as dumb as some of the other versions of the Tick is, because I was rewatching the original show, and they really make him pretty dumb in that show. And this version of the Tick, he's not as much as a nut job wacko as he is in the some of the other versions, and he's just very fun. I love him a lot. We have Dot Everest, played by Valerie Curry, who is Arthur's sister, and she's the best version of Dot, because every other version of Dot is just a nag and a kind of a bore. She's always telling Arthur to not do this, not do that, live a normal life. But this version of Dot, she's got, not only does she have the same baggage of losing her father to the Terror, but she's, a medic. She's got sort of a rough and tumble vibe to her. And in this season, she starts to realize certain things about herself that she didn't know, and she forms a stronger bond with Overkill, and her bond with Overkill kind of cause conflict with her and Arthur. We have Overkill, played by Scott Spicer, who I'm not familiar with as the actor, but he was fun last season, and Overkill is basically so like the Punisher, or he's a parody of the anti-hero, which Ben Edlund doesn't really like those type of characters. That's why he usually puts in a parody of that character, usually to make them negative. And I think this is the most positive version of him doing the anti-hero character. And in this, he's still struggling with the fact that he can't kill any people, because after the Tick saved his life, the Tick made him promise to not kill anyone, and he's very honor bound. So he's struggling with dealing with not having to kill people. We get a little more of his backstory with the Aegis Corporation, or the Aegis Agency, and an old enemy of his that's coming back that he has to deal with. And also we get some more backstory with Deja Boat as well, played by Alan Tudyk. Deja Boat is cool. Also, Miss Lint returns, played by Yara Martinez, and Miss Lint goes through an interesting arc. She's still in hiding, because after the whole fallout with the Terror, and it's not a spoiler because it's in the trailer, she becomes a superhero for her own reasons, and I'm now kind of leaving it at that, but I do like her look. Can't forget Superion, played by Brendan Hines, who is a Superman parody, and he's really fun. He pops up every so often, and he's basically just losing his mind, because he was the top superhero in the world, and his big claim to fame was that he killed the Terror. But once it was revealed that he lied and the Terror was still alive, the people around the world started to hate him, and people starting to boo him and dislike him on Instagram and Facebook, and he doesn't know how to handle it, and he kind of has these delusions of grandeur of what he can do to try to solve the situation. And we also get the introduction of the Aegis Agency, which is basically S.H.I.E.L.D., and they come back because the heroes are now popping up more villains are popping up, so they open up a new branch in the city, and we get some new interesting backstory with that corporation. So that's a quick rundown of the players that are in this season. It's 10 episodes. It is very easy to watch, and it's very fun. Like I said, I really like these characters. I love the Tick. And this is like the strongest writing I've seen with the Tick, because it is this long format show. It gives a lot of time to just have interesting moments with these characters, but they also still feel very true to the traditional versions of the character. For my favorite episode from the season is episode 10, Choose Love, which is the final episode, and it really brings everything together in an interesting way, and also leads into other things possibly potentially pretty big for the third season, which should be fun. Now, for me as a Tick fan, I would have to grade this season. So season 1 I would give like maybe a B or a B minus. This season I would actually have to give it an A, a solid A. it really felt even closer to what the Tick is, with the goofy villains and the goofy heroes, and some of the playing on the tropes. And there's some, like I said, there's some fun stuff in this season. I really enjoyed it as a Tick fan. As a person who's probably not a fan of a Tick, but you do love superhero shows, it probably is still in the range of a B or a B plus. But by it being a Tick and my love for the Tick, I would definitely give it an A, a 10 out of 10. Check it out on the Amazon Prime Video. That's all I have to say for non-spoilers, so stay tuned for the spoilers. First thing I want to talk about is the Tick's costumes. The Tick costume in this season is the best I've ever seen. It's really good. And it's, in looking back at the Patrick Warburton costume and how they would always talk about they couldn't get the mask right. I don't know if that was because of the sign of the times, they didn't think it would work on TV, but from the last season when he had the mask, it looked really good. So like the first suit is sort of like I feel it's like a parody on the like a shittier Joel Schumacher Batman-esque costume, and the coloring was a little off and the mask wasn't, but that was just for the pilot. And then the suit he has for the rest of the first season with the different panels and plating on it made me think more of like a sort of like an MCU inspired type of costume, so like Captain America's sort of costume, or well, yeah, or that type of costume. And then this season is much more of a smoother look, and it made me think more of like the Man of Steel costume with the chainmail, but you can get the impression of the muscles underneath. It just looked cool. I liked it. It was a really good design. The Tick and Arthur are working as heroes, and they go to this bank, and the bank gets robbed by this gang of fisherman-themed robbers, and they have this big lobster monster with them that's helping. It's like super strong and tough, and it rips open the vault door, causes a distraction, and while there's a distraction, they sneak out with the money. So the press calls it Lobstericles, which is just, it's a terrible name, and they even acknowledge how bad of a name that is. So while that's going on, the Aegis branch moves in, and like I said, Aegis is like S.H.I.E.L.D., and they have a leader. He's basically Nick Fury. His name is Tyrannosaurus Rathbone, or Ty Rathbone, played by Mark Kudish, who I really liked. And he's basically like traditional Nick Fury. He's like loud, shouty, you know, America fuck yeah type of guy. But he's also competent. He's not like a complete jerk, which I liked about him. Because sometimes that character can be like a complete jerk, but he's a cool guy. And he gets the Tick and Arthur to join up, and they have to go through different testing in order to prove that they can be part of the Aegis government, which provides them with technology, crime lab information, gives them food and stuff like that. And we find out about this the category system, where that's what they call people with superpowers, are categories. So you can be either 1 through whatever. And Arthur, of course, is a 0 because he sucks, and the Tick is like a category 4. But the Arthur, you know, he seems like a 0, but he actually is the best. Big thing with Aegis is they're trying to rebuild a new Flag 5 team, which Arthur desperately wants to be on. It's his childhood dream. So now Dot, I like what they did with Dot. Dot, she quits her job, and she's starting to have these flashbacks, and she starts to realize she has her own superpower where she can she has these premonitions which gives her like a jump start, so she knows how to maneuver around certain things, like when she stops that guy from spilling his hot coffee on, like, it was like a lady and her dog or something like that. And so she's kind of dealing with that, and she's also eager to actually kind of like be a vigilante, and because she got a taste of it working with Overkill last season, and she kind of really wants to keep up with it. And like I said, Overkill, he's still struggling with him not being able to kill, and he really wants the Tick to allow him to be able to kill, but Tick's like not going to do that. But Dot, because Dot also saved his life, and she finds out about this, she unwishes the Tick's wish, so now Overkill can kill, and he feels freed again. Now that the Aegis group is back, the Overkill and Deathboat are worried because they're on the run because they're traitors, because a mission that Overkill did years ago went bad, and his whole team got killed, and he feels Aegis might find him responsible, but they don't really know that. So Dot's like, well, just tell Ty that you're not a traitor, What she does, and Ty's like, look, I don't know if you are or not, but something's weird. The guy you were trying to find called the Duke still exists. So from that point on, Overkill and Dot are working together to track down the Duke. And the Duke is using this special, he's using this special technology, and he's turning people into human furniture, which was actually hilarious. It was like everyone's like contorted to look like a piece of furniture. Like there was the guy who was selling it, and he was like, I got two Ottomans that are Turkish and they're twins. He's also, I got a China cabinet, and he's like, yeah, you don't have to ask. Yes, it is a Chinese person. And so that was, to me, it reminded me of the villain, the Ottoman from the Tick cartoon. That was like the chick who could make furniture come to life. I think that was kind of like a play on that, but much more darker and sinister. We get Danger Boat's backstory. He's kind of like Kit from Knight Rider, but he's this big high-tech boat, and he has this infatuation with Arthur, and they find out, the Tick and Arthur find out that back at Aegis, there are other versions of Danger Boat. So when they're trying to track down Lobstericles, who's hiding somewhere in the sewers, Tick mentions, like, hey, we saw that you had some siblings that could fly. Can you fly? And he like freaks out, and it's tied up into his origin where he was a plane. He had his pilot, and him and his pilot were very close. And the guy kept it a secret that he has the AI and he's like sentient. And they were celebrating the 1 year anniversary of him being, basically his birthday, of him being sentient. And he got distracted, and in that distraction, he lost control, and it led to a crash, and the pilot died. So he no longer flies. He only operates as a boat. And that was all crazy, whole crazy deal that I thought was very interesting and very entertaining how that developed, and Arthur being a little more forthcoming with Danger Boat. I don't think he's going to be in a relationship with Danger Boat, but he's not quite as weirded out by Danger Boat anymore, and their bond becomes closer. Miss Lint, she's on the run, and the crime is increasing, and she's basically taken over, what was his name, Ramses, and sort of the Terror's empire, kind of. So she decides to pretend to be a superhero and take out all of her competition, but then that starts to backfire because people can kind of tell that she's Miss Lint. So she then has to hurt her own gang just a little bit to keep up appearances. I liked her, the sidekick guy she had with her, Edgelord, who was like the guy who created her suit. He's like deadpan and dressed in all black and moody. He was cool, and I liked her look. Her name was Joan of Arc, and she increases her lightning abilities, and she can fly now. Oh yeah, and then they have the 28th Amendment, which protects her identity, so they can't unmask her because it's against the law to do that. I love how Superion was losing his mind, and he had Arthur kind of as like his therapist, trying to give him advice, and he doesn't know how to react to the rejection. He takes, I forget what landmark it was, a mountain. He takes a mountain and he turns it into a statue of him saving humanity, which causes a lot of controversy, although he made humans look like a sad gingerbread man. He doesn't know how to deal with the stress. It's this news reporter, what's his name, E. Morgan Pearl, who's kind of like a Fox News type guy, and he's like talking shit about Superion the whole time, but Superion is just like really wants to get mess that guy up. And I love the bit, like he's also like, he's like a douchebag Superman, and like all of his ideas are based around the original Superman movies. But the bit where he kidnaps the reporter and he's flying through the sky doing like a parody on the Superman and Lois flying through the sky reading a poem type thing, that cracked me up. That was one of the funniest things this whole season. And I like when he was like, his idea for getting back on everybody's good side was like taking all the nuclear weapons and throwing them pinning them in a net and throwing them into the sun, which is similar to Superman 4. And then also the the bit where he's also thinking like, maybe if I fly the opposite rotation to Earth, I can go back in time to when everybody liked me. And he's like, I think I could do it. Like, I'm powerful enough. I think I could really do that. Or I could just kill everybody by throwing Earths off his axis. But I think it's worth it. You know, that's his logic. Like, he really wants to be loved. Eventually, they find Lobstericles, and it turns out she's a female. And the reason she's robbing is because the Donnellys are holding her kids hostage. And so Arthur, knowing this, now wants to help her, and he gets the Tick to come in, but she gets arrested by Joan of Arc. So now they have to try to track down the kids, but also have to help her out because she's not talking. And the science guy, Hobbs, he's like the head director of science. He wants to like experiment on her. So they got to go through all this paperwork to the bureaucracy, the mundane and the fantastic is what the Tick really thrives upon. And Arthur does his thing to get through and get her to convince the people that she's sentient and she was being held against her will. And but they keep the kids a secret because they don't want the government, the agency, to know about her kids. And that kind of bothers the Tick because he doesn't like to lie and keep secrets, which is a theme throughout this season of everyone keeping their own secrets. Dot's, secretly working with Overkill, and Walter, who's their stepfather, he's hiding his secret. Overkill and Dot go on a mission, and Overkill gets kidnapped, and there's a big explosion. Dot manages to get out thanks to her powers, and she ends up getting saved by Walter, who is her stepfather. And we find out Walter's secret, that he's an undercover Aegis agent who was assigned to watch their family. But then over time, he fell in love with their mother and got married to her and became their stepfather. His name is John Woo, which I believe is supposed to be a nod and a play on the Marvel character Jimmy Woo, who, if you've seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, he was the Asian FBI character. Although in the comics, he's a SHIELD agent and he's a badass, just like Walter is. So Walter is there to help them out, and they find this piece of technology, and they want to get it to Aegis to let them know that something is what's going on, and because the Duke is still alive. So Arthur and Tick become members of the Flag Five with some of the other superheroes, Bronze Star, and Sage, the supernumerary, who's like this Doctor Strange type guy, and he's got like a magic nipple on his chest that allows him to do magic. And the other hero, Flexon, is cool too. He's basically Plastic Man or Mr. Fantastic, and he's played by the guy who does the motion capture for Trevor in GTA 5, which I thought he looked familiar, and I thought he looks like Trevor. And it was like, oh, he is Trevor. It's revealed that the Duke is Dr. Agent Hobbs, played by John Hodgman, and he forces Overkill to assassinate Ty Rathbone. So Ty Rathbone is dead, and he takes his spot. And his whole thing is Aegis was a government agency that was supposed to monitor and protect humanity from these weird superpowered people, which I think Superion started once his ship crashed. Somehow that altered the DNA throughout the planet and people started popping up with superpowers. And Aegis was created to protect them from them and also regulate the superpowered people. But he had a problem once Ty added Overkill after the whole situation, and he trained Overkill to become a part of Aegis, and then other heroes started becoming a part of the organization. He had a problem with that, so he's basically a racist towards superpowered people. Standard. Nothing. He's not that wacky, and he's not that unique. So it's like, okay. Hobbs gets Joan of Arc to join him. And she's struggling because she actually likes being a superhero. Like, there's a side of her that really likes being a superhero. So she doesn't know if she wants to be good or bad. And basically, when they have the final battle, it's Lobstericles is under control. Overkill is under control. So Tick is fighting Lobstericles, and Overkill's trying to kill him, and Dot deals with him. And, well, he thought he had Joan of Arc on his side, but she was playing him the whole time. By being the leader of the Flag Five, she gets access not only to the Flag 5 tech, but also the Aegis tech. And when she had that, she got her squad was like robbing the company while they were dealing with that, and she dips out. So Dot distracts Overkill, and Arthur takes out Hobbs and destroys the device, which stops everyone from being mind controlled, and they save the day. Hobbs goes to jail. Then we get this interesting moment where Ty is dead. Now, Ty has this like weird capsule thing on his chest, and it's got like a black hole in it, and he's like feeding mice to it to keep it tame, which I'm like, well, why would he throw mice in the black hole? So his body is on the table, and the thing pops open, and these weird tentacles come out of it, and it does this weird magic spell, and it says Thragazog, and then goes back in, and then he wakes back up, and he's now alive. Now, if you're familiar with the Tick, Thragazog was a villain from the cartoon. he was this alien from another dimension, and he lived in the Tick's apartment. I know he lives in the same building as Arthur, like on the top floor, and he ends up making a clone of the Tick out of the Tick's mucus. It makes a mucus Tick. So that might be the direction they're going for the next season, which would be cool. He's not the classic villain I was expecting to see, but I'd be fine to see like a mucus Tick. After that, Ty Rathbone comes back, and he's going to reform Aegis. Aegis is not going to be as secretive as it is, and so Overkill and Deathbolt are reinstated. I think Dot signs up with them. Pops Stericles is set free. She's reunited with her kids. She's staying with some of the other heroes, and that's kind of the end of the season. And then we get this awesome moment where the Tick and Arthur are going back on patrol, and the Tick shouts "Spoon" as he heads through the door, which is the Spoon is the Tick's catchphrase, if you're not familiar with that. So that moment, I popped for that. And then it ends with the whole time Superion was on the moon, and he was contemplating what he can do, and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna fly back around the earth and hope and go back in time. It should work. And right as he's about to do it, this ship pops up over him and calls him out and says, "Fugitive 11X assumed position." And he turns around, he's like, oh shit. So apparently Superion is an escaped convict, so that should be fun for the next season. Yeah, I'm excited to see what the third season of the Tick is going to be. One of the things I really want to see Chairface Chippendale. He's a great villain. I would love to see El Cid. But another villain I really want to see is Barry, who is this guy who is another superhero, more like a Batman-ish Captain America type guy, who's also called the Tick, and he has this hang up with the Tick, calling himself the Tick, and they have a rivalry. And there's only one, if they do that character, there's only one person who I want to see play him, and that's Patrick Warburton, the original live-action Tick. He works on the show, he's a producer on the show, so it won't be hard to get him. I would love to see that. But yeah, that's a quick overrun of the Tick Season 2. Great time, especially if you're a Tick fan. If you love comic books and superheroes, check it out. It's definitely a different flavor. It's zany and wacky. Worth your time. That's all to say for this. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to the audio, give it a thumbs up or like it. Check out other episodes on this channel and stay tuned for more reviews. Peace.
Finish this thought. I am a slave to
the booty.